And so, it was in my favorite recliner that I spent yet another night. Oh well, at least the beer was close and very cold. I hobbled my way upstairs the next morning and cleaned up with a long shower, a fresh shave, and a clean set of clothes. I found Wendy in the kitchen, sitting at the table and eating a bowl of fresh fruit. We exchanged the usual morning pleasantries, regarding each other, it seemed, more as formal acquaintances rather than as man and wife. I helped myself to a large bowl of frosted flakes and sat down at the table with her. As soon as I did, Wendy got very serious. "Jack, I want to talk about something with you," she started, avoiding eye contact. "Good. It's about time. Look, I know this probably isn't going to be easy for you," she said, my stomach sinking. "But Ed and Joanne are leaving this coming Wednesday for vacation. They're taking Greg, Bobby, Melinda, Nate, and their families with them." "Wow, sounds like quite a trip. Where are they going?" "They're going to Hawaii for 10 days. And," she said, hesitating, "they invited me to go along with them." I immediately put my spoon down as I absorbed her words. "Hawaii? For 10 days?" "Yes, Jack. Ed's mother was supposed to go along with them initially, but she just had a pacemaker put in last week and they're concerned about her flying so soon afterwards. So Geraldine is going to stay home and they asked me if I wanted to take her place." First of all, I knew full well that having a pacemaker is a fairly routine and innocuous procedure. Sure, anything can happen, but it isn't very damned likely. The truth is that Ed and Joe probably told that line of bullshit to Wendy, and she believed it. Their plan was almost certainly to bring Wendy all along, probably to get her away from me. "I take it there is only room for one, and I'm not invited," I replied coldly. "You guys at the fire department have to pick your vacation so far in advance. You'd never be able to get the time off in such short notice, Jack." "Yeah, I know that, Wendy. Look, I know you're probably upset, Jack, but this could turn out to be a good thing." I could tell that even she didn't believe those words. "So let me get this straight. After everything that happened on the day I got hurt, your way of dealing with it is to not deal with it and spend the day at Ed and Joanne's yesterday. And now, when we really need to communicate, spend some time together, and get our collective shit in a pile, you're gonna run off with Ed and Joanne and their family to Hawaii for 10 days, leaving me here all alone and trying to get this mess figured out on my own. I just think we need some time apart, Jack. We need to get our own heads straight before we can talk about us as a couple and work on our marriage. And you think this can best be accomplished on the beaches at Waikiki with Kevin's family? Look, Jack, they're still my family too. Just because Kevin is gone doesn't mean that my relationship with his family comes to an end. No, it doesn't. And I would never expect it to. I just wish you were as focused on the family I was hoping we were starting when we got married as much as you focus on the family you had with Kevin. And we will, Jack. I promise. Just as soon as I get home. I know you're probably hurt by this and feel excluded, but trust me. This could be good for both of us to have this time apart. You need to trust me, Jack." "Jesus," I said, shaking my head. "We haven't even gotten to take a honeymoon yet, and you're off to the tropics with Kevin's family." "We still can, Jack. When we have our time off together in late August, I'll let you take me anywhere you want to. By that time, hopefully we will have gotten all our problems sorted out." I just stared at her in disbelief. It was like talking to a brick wall. Nothing I was saying was getting through. "I don't want you to go, Wendy. I really don't." She was taken aback. "Are you trying to tell me I can't go?" "No, I'm not. I don't own you, Wendy, and I can't tell you what you can and cannot do. I would never treat you that way. But you and I are at an early and critical time in our marriage, and we're on extremely thin ice. As I said yesterday, running away from me won't make this any easier. You're gonna go on a 10-day vacation from your problems. I get to stay here and have to deal with them every day while you're gone. I have to deal with this situation the best way I know how, Jack." "That's fine," I said, standing up from the table. "Just remember that any decisions you make might have a consequence you didn't intend. This situation is telling me a lot about your commitment to our marriage, Wendy." "What the hell is that supposed to mean, Jack? Is that some kind of a threat?" "No, it isn't a threat at all, Wendy. You are making a decision to get away from me and our problems for a while. But you don't get to determine how I will react to your decision." I put my bowl in the sink and retreated downstairs. We said little to each other the remainder of the day. I got a couple of buddies from the fire department to help me grab my old bed out of my storage rental and set it up in one of the spare bedrooms in the basement. I didn't feel like spending another night in a recliner or a sofa. I also grabbed my old bedroom dresser and essentially moved all of my stuff out of the master bedroom and into the basement spare room. Wendy observed it all and said nothing. The next 2 days were extremely cool and icy. She taught her 2 remaining classes on Monday and Tuesday of that week and had a fellow Spanish instructor and teaching assistant fill in for her for the remaining classes of the summer. Since it was nearly the end of the term, her teaching assistant was more than capable of proctoring the final exam for her students. She spent the remainder of her time either packing for her trip with the Parmalees or shopping for things she would need on her trip. She told her superiors that she needed it for personal and mental health reasons. Surprisingly, they agreed. My despair and loneliness grew minute by minute as she got closer to leaving. Greg and Bobby would drive their own families to the Minneapolis airport while Nate rode with Melinda and her fiancé. Wendy was going to be riding with Ed and Joanne. I got out of bed at 6 on Wednesday morning and caught Wendy just as she was getting ready to head out the front door. "What? You weren't even going to say goodbye?" "Look, Jack, this isn't easy and I didn't want to make it harder than it is for you. Once again, you take the easy way out and just avoid me." Thanks a lot," I said, sarcastically. "I'll call you the minute we land in Honolulu. I promise, okay?" I said nothing, only tears forming in my eyes. I felt like I was watching my whole life walking out the door. "I can't promise I'll be here when you get home," I said. She seemed to take pause for a moment, but then mustered up some additionally resolve. "Hell, even I didn't know if I meant it or not. I have to go. Ed and Joanne are waiting." She walked over, tried to give me a quick kiss on the lips, but I moved my face. She looked at me and took her bags to Ed and Joanne's van. They greeted her with huge smiles and hugs and told her how thrilled they were that she was going with them. As for me, I felt like the remaining pieces of my heart had shattered and fallen to the floor. I watched out the front window as they drove away. When they were gone, I collapsed on the sofa and wept for the next hour. I was absolutely miserable for the first 2 days she was gone. I was so hurt and pissed off that I never even answered the phone when she called to tell me that she had landed. All I could think about was the fact that my new bride was on a vacation with the family of her deceased husband. She was there by herself, without me, and also happened to be in the presence of her husband's very much single younger brother, Nate Parmalee. It had been my suspicion for quite some time, ever since I met Ed and Joanne, that they were somehow concocting a way to get Wendy and Nate together, like some sort of biblical responsibility taken directly from the Old Testament. Perhaps that was why Nate always seemed to have that damned smirk on his face all the time, as if he knew all along that Wendy would someday be his, and there was nothing I could do about it. Well, Wendy was now 5,000 miles away from home with Nate and the rest of the family, and Nate would be right. There was not a damn thing I could do about it. I did my very best to keep active while she was gone. My stupid left ankle was still giving me fits, but I was at least to the point where I could walk on it without the crutches. Ibuprofen was still my best friend. The Percodan was upsetting my stomach, with ice packs another close drinking buddy behind it. I was spending time at the Red River Falls Fire Department and working out in our small gymnasium, at least doing some lifting and cardio that didn't involve putting weight on my ankle. It would probably be another week before I could go back to work on light duty, and then another 2 to 3 weeks before I could go back to work unrestricted. By day 3, I could sense that Wendy was starting to get a little paranoid by the fact that I wouldn't answer her calls. Truthfully, I wanted her to sweat a little bit. She had done everything she could to rationalize bailing on me and our marriage for 10 days while she enjoyed some fun and sun in the tropics with her former in-laws. If there was some way I could stick it to her and the Parmalees just a little bit by making it less enjoyable for Wendy, then I knew that it would also be less enjoyable for the Parmalees if Wendy was having a shitty time. By Saturday of that week, I was feeling good enough to get a little outdoor exercise. So I decided to go for a fairly lengthy walk. My ankle was sore, but I was able to grit through a 5-mile walk. I was limping through the front door and into the kitchen when I noticed that the answering machine had a message on it. I was almost sure it was from Wendy and was tempted to hit erase before listening to it. But curiosity got the better of me and I hit the play button. Yes, this message is for Ms. Wendy Parmalee. Ms. Parmalee, this is Andrea calling from Northwestern Cryogenics. At your earliest convenience, please contact us at 595-555-9285. Again, this is Andrea from Northwestern Cryogenics. Please call us at 595-555-9285 at your earliest convenience. Thank you. Northwestern Cryogenics? What the hell could that be about? I replayed the message again and made sure to write down the phone number. A quick call to the number confirmed a hunch that they wouldn't be open on the weekend, but I wanted to make sure. I fired up my laptop and punched in a search for the company, which led me to their website. The website looked pretty plain Jane and didn't really say a whole lot. Basically, they offered a number of services from providing cryogenic gases and liquids, such as nitrogen, as well as cryogenic storage for a wide variety of biomedical services. I've always heard stories of people who have family members cryogenically frozen, but I was pretty sure that wasn't the case as I had personally visited Kevin Parmalee's grave at Rosewood Cemetery on numerous occasions with Wendy. No, it would have to wait until Monday before I could call and satisfy my curiosity about this mysterious message. Just then, the home phone rang again and I picked it up without looking at the caller ID. Jack, I finally reached you, sweetheart. It was Wendy, of course. She sounded relieved, almost as if she were thinking, great, he's alive. Now I can get back to enjoying my vacation. Yes, you did. Do you need something, Wendy? I was just about to jump in the shower. Yes, Jack, she said, sounding put off. I did need something. I need to talk to my husband. I called to find out how you were doing. Did you really call for that? Or did you just call to satisfy your conscience that you're trying to stay in touch with me for a few minutes so you can go and enjoy the rest of your spur-of-the-minute vacation with your ex-in-laws? They're not my ex-in-laws, Jack. I never got divorced from this family. There's a big difference. Whatever. I doubt that Nate sees you as an in-law. He probably sees you as a gorgeous woman who is not currently in the company of her husband 5,000 miles away from home. Oh my God. Is that what you think? You think I came all this way to have a fling with my own brother-in-law? Jesus, Jack, Nate is like a brother to me. You know what, Wendy? It really doesn't matter what I think. You've proven to me time and again that what I think doesn't matter to you. So I guess it shouldn't matter to you what I think. I could hear her sigh and choke up a bit on the other end. Look, Jack, I don't want to fight. I'm going to use this time away to get my head cleared. And then when I get home, we're going to work this out, okay? Please, Jack, I don't want to fight. Of course you don't, I thought. You want to have a clear conscience so you can have fun on your vacation. Look, she continued, I have to get going. We're getting ready to leave for a tour of Pearl Harbor. Ed wants to see the USS Arizona. I'll call you again tomorrow, okay? I love you, Jack. I wish I could believe that, Wendy. Jack, please don't be like that. You're hurting me. Go have fun with the Parmalees, your so-called in-laws. Will you please talk to me tomorrow? We'll see, I said. Okay, goodbye, Jack. I love you. I did say anything and hung up. I'm sure she noticed that I didn't return her I love you. Perhaps that would give her some more food for thought between now and tomorrow, if I even bothered to answer her. I still had a week to go before she got home, and the longer she was gone, the more I was resenting her for being gone. Sunday, I pretty much vegged out all day. The twins were playing that afternoon, and so I relaxed in my favorite recliner with a freshly stocked mini fridge full of beer. The twins played miserable, but the cold beer helped ease the sting from the loss, as well as the lingering pain and irritation from my ankle and my worsening situation with Wendy. I knew that we were going to have to hash everything out once and for all. Even if Wendy put up a convincing argument, and I was pretty sure that she couldn't, we were still going to have to talk about the elephant in the room, her ongoing infatuation and fantasies with her deceased husband. It still depressed me to think about what I walked in on last week. On one hand, it would have been incredibly erotic to watch her pleasure herself like that. It was always one of my biggest fantasies. There's nothing sexier than a woman who is willing to take charge of her own orgasm from time to time. But the huge downside was the fact that I wasn't even remotely a part of it. I couldn't help but feel like Wendy was just using my physical body to try and somehow continue the life that she had with Kevin. I mean, we had spent more time with Kevin's family since we got married than we even did with Wendy's family or my own family. It was pretty damn depressing, that's for sure. I never heard the upstairs phone ring on Sunday evening, so Wendy tried to reach me on my cell. I looked at the caller ID and just didn't feel like answering it. I had a nice buzz going, courtesy of Mr. Budweiser, and didn't feel like ruining it with another depressing conversation with Wendy. A couple minutes after she called, she tried texting. Don't shut me down, Jack. I needed this time away to think. I also did you a favor by giving you some space. Wow, she just totally didn't get it. I texted back, you call this a favor? You and I have different ideas of favors. That's like amputating a leg for a sprained ankle. Apparently she didn't like the response. You're taking this way too hard, Jack. And blowing everything out of proportion. Blowing everything out of proportion? Then what the hell do you call what I walked in on last week when I came home from work after getting hurt? How would you feel if you walked in on me watching a homemade porno with an ex-girlfriend while jerking off? In our marital bed? We still haven't even come close to talking about that. It was nearly 10 minutes before she wrote back. That is totally unfair. Yes, I'm sure it was weird for you to see, Jack. I can't just forget about Kevin. I didn't mean to hurt you. I just needed the release. You can't possibly understand until someone you love as much as I loved Kevin gets violently taken away from you. I don't expect you to understand, but you have no right to expect me to just forget either. I didn't even bother to respond. I just turned the phone off completely, grabbed another beer, and flipped the channel from Fox Sports North to ESPN to watch the Sunday night game. It was the Yankees and the Red Sox, two teams I didn't really care for all that much, but I couldn't help watching them play when I got the chance just because of how much the two teams can't stand each other. As that fat pig CC Sabathia delivered the opening pitch, I couldn't help but think of something my dad told me long ago. Never argue with a crazy woman. They'll drag you down to their level and beat you with experience. Wendy was taking crazy to a whole new dimension. I just had to decide if I was willing to let her take me along for the ride. I went for another long walk Monday morning, nearly 10 miles. The ankle held up pretty okay with the ankle brace. It was almost noon by the time I got back home, grabbed the mail from the box, and headed back inside. Looking at the home phone reminded me of the message from that Northwestern Cryogenics place. I quickly retrieved the number and dialed. Northwestern Cryogenics, this is Andrea. May I help you? She sounded very pleasant. Yes, my name is Jack Fitzgerald. I'm calling on behalf of my wife, Wendy Parmalee. You left a message with her this past weekend? Oh, yes, Mr. Fitzgerald. I meant to call her on Friday, but I got busy with a department meeting. I was in the office on Saturday for a bit and wanted to at least let her know I called. I understand. Unfortunately, Wendy isn't here right now and won't be home for a while. I was wondering if there was a message or something I could relay for her. I'm sorry, Mr. Fitzgerald, but HIPAA rules stipulate that I can only speak with your wife. I apologize. I understand, I said. Damn. I'll see if I can get her to contact you later today or something. Very well, Mr. Fitzgerald. Thank you for calling. Weird. I was no closer to solving this little mystery. She talked about HIPAA rules. As a firefighter and paramedic, I was very much aware of what the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act was and what it meant. Among a gazillion governmental laws and regulations, the most prominent feature of HIPAA was the patient's rights to privacy. It spelled out very specifically what personal health information could be shared and who it could be shared with. It also identified stiff penalties to individuals and organizations who inappropriately shared a person's personal health information. So, whatever Wendy's business was with Northwestern Cryogenics, I would have to be a bit sneaky if I wanted to dig deeper. Against my better judgment, I did. I contacted the fire station to see if a friend of mine, Monica Banner, was working today. Monica was a firefighter paramedic on my shift. She is a hell of a firefighter, a terrific medic, and just a great all-around person. Even though she was only one of 3 females on our department, she was very much just one of the guys. I'd never tell her this, but she is also smoking hot. Very fit and active and big into Tough Mudder competitions and women's triathlons. She's already run marathons in 10 states and plans to eventually complete one in all 50 states. Monica and I were also great friends. Shamefully, for some reason, I never really let on to Wendy how good of friends we really were. Absolutely nothing sexual between Monica and I. But for some reason, I just never really divulged to Wendy that Monica is one of my best friends. I stopped down at the fire station that afternoon. I hadn't heard from Wendy all day, and I assumed she was still pissed at me over our text exchange from the night before. Monica had just gotten back from an ambulance call and was finishing her medical run report when I stopped in. Hey, look at you, Gimpy. Nice of you to drop by, she said as I hobbled into the station. Wow, if I didn't know better, I'd almost think you were happy to see me. We chit-chat for about 15 minutes or so, just exchanging pleasantries and small talk about the goings-on at Red River Falls Fire Department. But Monica could sense that I had an ulterior motive for stopping by to see her. So, what's the real reason you stopped by, Jack? How's married life treating you? She could see the dejected look cross my face, and she became concerned. Not so good, actually. In fact, it is becoming more and more apparent that I have made the worst mistake of my life, I said. Monica wasted no time grabbing some coffee for us from the kitchen. Then we went and sat down in a small office and talked. For about 20 minutes straight, I did nothing but talk while Monica sat there and absorbed every word. She never said anything, never offered an opinion or a suggestion. She just sat and listened. I even brought up the mystery of Northwest Cryogenics and told her that I couldn't explain why it bothered me so much. So, what can I do to help? She asked. Well, that's what I wanted to talk to you about. I was wondering if you would be willing to pretend to be my wife. Huh? Seriously? What's the angle? I can't talk to this gal from Northwest Cryogenics. It's a HIPAA violation if she shares anything with me. But she might actually think you are Wendy if you call. I can give you Wendy's information so that this place will actually think they're talking to her. I dunno, Jack. This is kind of weird. Please, Monica. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. My marriage is hanging by a thread right now. I just need some peace of mind right now. Monica thought for a few moments. Okay, Jack, but you owe me a steak for this. Deal. We went downstairs to the basement and used my smartphone to contact Northwestern Cryogenics. Luckily, they were still open for another hour yet. Northwestern Cryogenics, this is Andrea. How can I assist you? Yes. This is Wendy Fitzgerald. I had a message to contact you. I'm sorry. I didn't have a Wendy Fitzgerald in our system. Are you sure you contacted the right number? Monica covered the phone with her hand. What do I do? She whispered. Oh shit. Tell them you're Wendy Parmalee. You got remarried. Wendy Fitzgerald is my married name. I'm registered under Wendy Parmalee. One moment, please. We could hear the click of computer keys in the background. Ah, yes. Here it is. Could I please have you verify your date of birth and social security number? Monica gave Wendy's birth date and SSN from a piece of paper. Very good, Ms. Parmalee. The reason I am calling is to verify that your request has been processed and your cryo package has been shipped. It will arrive at its destination tomorrow. Have her verify the destination, I whispered. Could you please verify the destination of the package? Monica asked. Yes, ma'am. Your package is scheduled for delivery to Macmillan Women's Clinic in Red River Falls and is addressed to a Dr. Virginia Howard. Monica looked at me quizzically. Thank you. And can you tell me what all is in those packages? Excuse me? Andrea asked. The packages, Monica continued. Can you confirm what is being shipped to the clinic? Ooh, good question, I thought. Well, Andrea continued, sounding confused. The packages contain 5 vials of preserved donor semen. Monica's jaw dropped in shock. I could feel the blood drain from my own face. Can you tell me about the donor? I beg your pardon? The donor, Monica said. Can you tell me about the donor? God, I hope she wasn't giving too much away. Ms. Parmalee, the sperm was donated and banked by your husband, Kevin Parmalee. Monica's face went as white as mine. All I could do was slump down in my chair at the revelation. Okay, thank you, she said, her voice trailing off. Will there be anything else, Ms. Parmalee? No, that will be all. I'll call the clinic tomorrow. Thank you. I punched the icon to end the call. Monica and I looked at one another in horror and disbelief. Wendy had requested sperm samples from her deceased husband to be delivered to a clinic in Red River Falls. Any idiot could tell that she wanted to get pregnant from her dead husband. Jack, I'm so sorry. I have absolutely no idea what to say. I was at a loss for words. I guess I have some more investigating to do. Is Wendy on her own insurance through the college, or is she on our plan through the city? I thought for a moment. She dropped her insurance when we got married. It costs a lot less for her to be on my plan. Can you contact Blue Cross and find out what is going on? If she were to actually do something like this, it would have to get run through insurance. In vitro fertilization costs like $30,000 to $40,000 a pop, and our insurance only lets you try twice. I assume you don't have that kind of money lying around, and neither does she, right? Oh, hell no, I don't. I'd never be able to afford that, especially after I dropped a 20 grand down payment on my truck and camper last year. Wendy, on the other hand, might have some money left from Kevin's life insurance. I know she used most of it to pay off their house after he died. If I were you, Monica suggested, I'd contact Blue Cross and find out if she had that planned or not. If it was run through insurance, surely they'd have to share at least some of that information with you, wouldn't they? I don't know for sure. I would surely think so, but you never know about these HIPAA laws, you know? Monica nodded in agreement. God, Jack, what a mess. I know it's early yet, but what do you think you'll do? I just sat there, shaking my head. I don't know, Monica. I really don't. If this turns out to be true, and she is planning on getting pregnant with Kevin's child, then I can unequivocally say we are done. There will be absolutely no coming back from this. I won't tolerate being forced to raise another man's child, especially one whose father has been dead for 4 years. Monica just looked at me sympathetically, marveling at the Jerry Springer-type drama that seemed to be falling upon me. The only thing I can do is try and call the insurance company and the clinic tomorrow. Jesus, Jack, I honestly don't know what to say. I'm at a loss for words. Yeah, me too. Look, I better get out of here and go clear my head somewhere. Jack, we're off duty tomorrow. I don't have anything planned. If you need my help some more, I'll do anything you need. Okay? Thanks, Monica. As much as I hate to say it, I might have to take you up on that. I'm here for you, Jack. That's what firefighters do. I know, Monica. Thanks a ton. We both stood, looked at each other for a few moments, and then fell into a tight embrace. We held each other for a while, and I fought as hard as I could not to cry. I lost. Monday night yielded only a text from Wendy. Is now an okay time to talk? I couldn't believe she just sent me a text asking me if we could talk. Why not just pick up the damned phone? What the hell is so hard about that? I wondered where in the hell the aggressive, assertive version of Wendy was that I had gotten to know and had fallen in love with. Even though it almost certainly meant a knockdown, drag-out fight, I wished like hell that she would just come out and confront everything that was going wrong in our marriage, including the episode of me walking in on her pleasuring herself to a homemade sex tape. If you have to text me to ask if it is okay to talk, then it probably isn't. Okay to talk. Have fun with Nate and the rest of the Parmaleys. I never heard back from her, so I assumed she got the point. I met Monica the next morning at our local Starbucks. I grabbed a tall black coffee and she ordered tea, and we found an empty booth in a quiet corner. Are you sure you want to do this, Jack? Yeah, I nodded. I have to. I need to find out what she is up to. My God, Monica said, as she started dialing the clinic. This whole thing is like something off a really bad television show. Tell me about it, I said. I keep waiting for tickets to Jerry Springer to show up in the mail. We both turned out attention to the phone speaker as we heard someone answer. Macmillan Clinic, this is Stephanie. How may I help you? Yes, this is Wendy Parmalee, Monica lied. I'm calling to verify my appointment with Dr. Howard. One moment, please, Stephanie said. Yes, Ms. Parmalee. I have an IVF consult with Dr. Howard scheduled for next Tuesday. I'm sorry, Monica said. What type of appointment did you say? An IVF consultation, ma'am. In vitro fertilization, correct? Even though she expected, Monica was still stunned. All I could do was just close my eyes in shame and frustration. Ma'am, are you still there? Stephanie asked. Yes. Yes, I'm still here. Will there be anything else? Monica looked at me for an answer. I mouthed the word insurance to her. Oh, yes, Monica replied. I was wondering if this was going to get billed to my insurance or not. I have Blue Cross through the city of Red River Falls. One moment, please. I'll check the account instructions, Stephanie said. After about a minute of checking, she replied, it looks like this account is being billed through a private payer. I'm sorry, I guess I wasn't expecting that. Can you confirm who this is being billed to? Monica asked. Did you not make this payment arrangement, Ms. Parmalee? Yes, I did, but I just want to make sure everything is correct, Monica groped, rolling her eyes in panic and frustration. Stephanie sounded skeptical. Sure, Ms. Parmalee. Can I just have you verify some information for me? Absolutely. Can I have you verify your social security number, your insurance carrier and plan number, your home address, and your home and mobile numbers listed on the account? It isn't being billed to your insurance carrier, but I just need the info for identification. I sure can, Monica replied, relieved. She read everything verbatim off the instructions I had given her the day before along with the rest I had written down in anticipation of verification of her identity. Thank you, Ms. Parmalee, Stephanie said, sounding satisfied. According to the account, prepayment for the consultation and procedure has been made by Mr. Ed Parmalee. Son of a bitch, I knew it. I slammed my fist down on the table in frustration. I immediately tried to compose myself as my actions drew the attention of everyone in the coffee shop. Thank you, Stephanie. I appreciate all your help, Monica said, taking my hand in her own and desperately trying to comfort me. No problem, Ms. Parmalee. We'll see you next week. Oh God, Jack. I don't even know what to say. Let's just get the hell out of here. We left the Starbucks and headed back out to my truck. It was all I could do to keep from hyperventilating. My marriage as I knew it was dead. It had been a complete lie. The woman I had intended to marry and spend the rest of my life with had apparently married me with the intention of getting pregnant with her deceased husband's cryogenically frozen sperm and raising the child as mine. With the full knowledge of Ed and Joan Parmalee, I was effectively being cucked by Kevin Parmalee from beyond the grave. We drove in silence back to the fire station so Monica could get her vehicle. As she got out, she turned and said, Hey, Jack, do you want to come over to my place for a bit? I can throw on another pot of coffee and we can just sit and talk if you want. I shook my head. I appreciate the offer, Monica, but I've got to head back and start getting some things straightened out. What are you going to do, Jack? I let out a long sigh. Well, I guess the first thing I'm going to do is call my old landlord and find out if I can get my old apartment back or one like it. Once I've got that straightened out, it's just a matter of getting my stuff moved out of Wendy's house and picking up the rest of my stuff from the storage rental. Monica just stood there and nodded. Jack, she started, unsure of what to say, please keep me posted. Update me on how you're doing and let me know if you're okay. You know I'm here for you. Anything you need. If you need help moving your stuff, just let me know. I won't breathe a word of this to anyone, I promise. I know, Monica. Right now, besides my parents and my sister, you're the one person I know that has my back in this. Damned right I do, she said, managing a smile. Monica is a total tomboy, but she also has an incredible smile. I don't think I'd ever break my own rule about never dating anyone I work with and, especially, never dating anyone who is a subordinate of mine. That shit never works out well, it seems. But if I ever did break that rule, I'd seriously consider breaking it with Monica. There was just one little problem with that idea. We were all pretty certain Monica is a lesbian. I contacted my old landlord, Kendrick Realty and Management, shortly after I left Monica at the fire station. Regrettably, my old apartment had already been leased. However, Allison Kendrick, the vice president of the company, knew me and offered me a really sweet deal. Since there were no remaining ground floor units available, she offered to rent me an apartment on the second floor for the same price as the ground floor I had previously. This was a great deal as my original apartment was only a one-bedroom apartment, and the second floor apartments were all 2- and 3-bedroom apartments. The one she gave me was a poolside entrance, 3-bedroom apartment. I would be saving about $300 a month because of the difference. I ended up just getting an overnight rental on a small U-Haul. I was more than confident I could get all of my stuff from Wendy's house and then return for all my stuff at the storage rental. True to her word, Monica showed up to help me move and even brought some friends with her. Thankfully, they were people I didn't really know that well. I wasn't ready yet to spill the beans of my failed marriage to all of my fellow firefighters and medics yet. Although I knew they would be caring and respectful, I also knew they would probably avoid me like the plague as firefighters and cops generally had a reputation as being total a-holes when they were going through a divorce. I had no reason to think I would be any different. Around 1 o'clock, we were just getting my sectional theater sofa loaded in the U-Haul when my phone buzzed. I looked at it and saw an incoming call from Wendy. I started at it while it buzzed 3 or 4 more times and reluctantly decided to answer. Yes? Well, good morning to you too, she said, feigning indignation. Is it? I hope so, Jack. I didn't like the way last night ended between us. I didn't either, Wendy. The problem is, I don't really like the way today is starting out any better. Jack, I told you already. I really needed this time away. It has really given me some time to clear my head and refocus on what's important. I just shook my head. You're amazing, you know that? Why? Thank you, Jack, she said, her voice softening. That wasn't a compliment. She paused. Well, what was it then? She asked, disappointed. It's amazing that we dated for as long as we did, took things as painfully slow as we did, only to realize afterward that I still have absolutely no idea who you are. She gasped. Jack, how can you say such a thing? I called to see how you are because I care about you. I wanted you to know that I'm thinking of you. That's funny, Wendy. Why? Because someone else called while you've been gone. Who? I paused for effect. Northwestern Cryogenics. Kevin's spermicles will arrive at Macmillan Clinic this week. Your appointment with Dr. Howard is all set and paid for. Being a single mother is a tough job, Wendy. I wish you the best of luck. The last thing I heard before ended the call was a distinct gasp of horror. As soon as I hung up on Wendy, I returned to my group of friends to finish loading my stuff into the U-Haul. My phone starting blowing up with repeated phone calls and text messages from Wendy demanding to talk to me. I could not have been in less of a mood to speak with her, and I just wanted to focus on getting my shit together and getting the hell out of there. The house had never belonged to me. Anyway, I was nothing more than an uninvited guest there, living in the shadow of a ghost. We ended up taking my stuff back to the same storage rental unit most of it had come out of when I tried to carve out a little niche of my own in Wendy's house. That same storage center also had a large parking lot where I stored my camper. Calling it a camper is sort of an injustice. It is a large 35-foot Coachman fifth-wheel trailer that I bought at the same time I got my truck. I like to travel and like to go see interesting places. The fifth wheel is the reason I bought my F-250. As soon as I got everything dropped off back at the storage center, I hooked up to fifth wheel and hauled it down to Gallagher State Park, which is a very nice and scenic area along the Red River. In addition to lots of woods, scenery, fishing spots, and nature trails, GSP has a tremendous campground and RV lot with full hookups, including waste and sewer. Seasonal memberships at the park were only $1,500 a year, which is a steal. I was in luck as they still had an open lot. Rich Sherman, the park ranger, let me rent the lot for the remaining season for only $500. That just meant that I had until October 1st to remove it to avoid paying for a full season the following year. Some people bought and traded campers and seasonal memberships like real estate. There are trailers and fifth wheels that probably haven't been moved in 10 or 15 years, if not longer. It was supper time when I finally finished getting the fifth wheel set up and got the electric, water, and sewer lines in place. It was nice not having to worry about my levels of potable water, gray water, and black water, and having to find a dump station every few days. There was a nice fire ring between my lot and the adjacent one, along with a park-supplied picnic table. I had already set out a few folding chairs and decided to strike up a fire, pull up a chair, and just have a couple of hot dogs for supper. Maybe I'd even treat myself to a s'more or two afterwards. With a nice spot in my comfy, oversized Coleman folding chair and a Bud Heavy in my hand, I finally pulled out my phone and saw that I missed over 30 phone calls from Wendy and nearly 45 text messages begging me to talk to her. The last text message she sent said, "Please don't let the day end without talking to me, Jack." My emotions were way too raw right now to have a conversation with her. It didn't occur to me earlier to shut off the GPS tracker on my phone and disable the app for it, but I did now. I doubt Wendy had the presence of mind to bother with looking me up, since she obviously knew I was still in Red River Falls and she was in Hawaii with the Parmalee clan. But an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, and I disabled the GPS to keep her from tracking me down the minute she got back home. I decided to send her one last text before shutting my phone down. Not going to talk right now because I don't know what to say. There are no words to describe this situation. Hurt doesn't even begin to describe what I'm feeling. But then again, I suppose it shouldn't hurt at all to lose you, because it now looks more and more like I never had you to begin with. I was just about to power off the phone when it buzzed. "Please don't shut me out, Jack. It isn't like what you said. I can explain everything. I promise. We need to talk. If you don't want to talk over the phone because you don't want to hear me, then at least chat by text." I wrote back, "My emotions are shot. I cannot have this conversation now. I am exhausted from the stress of getting hurt at work and now from having to deal with this. I need to get some decent rest without the use of alcohol or pain meds. And there is zero point in having this conversation when we're 4,000 or 5,000 miles apart. Good night." She then wrote, "I'm coming home tomorrow on the first available flight. We will get this straightened out. I never should have come on this trip. WTF was I thinking?" That's exactly what I had been thinking all along. WTF? She wasn't going to like my reply. "Don't bother coming home early. I already moved out and secured a new place to stay. Not ready to deal with this shitstorm yet, anyway. Coming home early won't help." I punched off the phone and plugged it into my charger for the night. After a couple of ballpark franks and another beer, I spent the next couple of hours just listening to some music and enjoying the fire before calling it a night. I decided to forego a shower and just climbed the stairs into the forward cabin and crashed on the big queen-sized bed. With 4 full slide-outs on my Coachman fifth wheel, the place suddenly felt huge as the enormity of my loneliness encompassed me. I realized in that moment that it was a hell of a lot better to be lonely by myself than to be miserable in a marriage where your wife still pines for her deceased first husband. The stereo was still playing as I lay there in bed. I'm a classic rock and roll guy, and the song One by Three Dog Night began playing softly over the speakers. One is the loneliest number that you'll ever do. 2 can be as bad as 1. It's the loneliest number since the number 1. Yeah, the story of my life. I ended up sleeping like a rock that night. I think it was probably because of the fact that I was in a place that was definitely my own, and I didn't have to compete with phantoms, specters, and ghosts for anyone's attention. The only thing I regretted at the moment was the fact that I didn't have a dog or something to keep my company. I spent about 3 hours that morning going for a short early swim and taking a long walk on the hiking trails around Gallagher Park. It wasn't until about 10:30 or so that I even remembered that I hadn't turned my cell phone back on. Just for good measure, I made doubly sure that I had turned the GPS tracker off, which I had. One of the first things I noticed was that my voicemail inbox was full and there were over 30 text messages sent since I got off the phone with Winnie last night. They were the usual run-of-the-mill messages you would expect from a panicking wife, telling me how much she loved me, how much she needed me, and how I had the whole situation completely wrong. According to Wendy, this was all just a misunderstanding and a gross miscommunication. I read the last text message she sent the night before. "Booked a flight. Land at MSP tomorrow 5 p.m. Back in RRF around 9. Please be waiting at home. I love you, Jack." I was just about to empty my entire text message inbox when my phone buzzed again. "Getting on the plane now. On my way home. See you soon. United Flight 5549, if you want to meet me at MSP. Will you please? Would love for your face to be the first one I see, Jack." Boy, she really knew how to tug at the old heartstrings. I'll give her that. I decided to just stay close to the campground for most of the week before moving back into my apartment. One thing dawned on me, though, and that was that I needed to have a talk with my parents about what was happening with me and Wendy. My parents are both newly retired and basically just enjoying life, so I knew they would probably be around. Sure enough, my dad answered the phone and could tell immediately that something was wrong. He invited me over to their house for supper that night, and I told them I had some things to talk about that they probably wouldn't like hearing. I got to their place that night around 5 o'clock. Dad was waiting for me on the front porch. My dad, Jim Fitzgerald, was around 6 feet 1 inch and 220 pounds. He was a full-blooded Irishman to the last cell in his body. St. Patrick's Day in our home growing up was about as important as Christmas and Easter. The three most important things in his life were his family, his former work, and Notre Dame football. My mother, Sandra, was fixing supper when I walked in the house. She, too, immediately sensed something was wrong, most notably that Wendy wasn't with me. I hadn't even bothered to tell them that Wendy had taken an unannounced trip to Hawaii with the Parmaleys. "You look like shit, Jack," my father observed. "Well, if I look anything on the outside the way I feel on the inside, I'm sure you're probably right." My mother stepped away from the stove to join us. "I've got a brisket in the oven. Are you hungry, Jack?" "I'm always hungry for your food, Mom. I notice you've got a bit of a hitch in your giddy up," Dad said. "Yeah, I had a rough day at work last week. Fell through the front porch of a house and sprained my ankle pretty bad." "Oh my God, you got hurt? Was it a fire?" My mom had a tendency to overreact to little things. "Well, yeah, it was a fire, but I'm all right. Just a crappy old house, and the porch was even crappier. It could have happened to anyone. Just a sprain, that's all. I'll be back to work in a few days." "God, I hate your job sometimes, sweetie," she soothed. "Really, Mom? It's no big deal. I'm fine." "Well," my dad interjected, "something is obviously not fine. You look like you've got the weight of the world on your shoulders, son." "I guess you could say that." "Well, spill it. What's going on?" I let out a sigh. "It's Wendy. Ever since the wedding and moving in together, we've been a million miles apart. Nothing seems to be working and my marriage is falling apart before it even begins." "Oh," my dad said, getting up from his chair. "Looks like we're gonna need beer to deal with this." He went to the fridge and grabbed 2 Sam Adams Boston Lagers. "You want one?" he said, gesturing to my mother. She shook her head. My mother hardly drank and never drank beer, but my dad still always offered, never wanting to drink alone. Typical Irishman. I took a pull off the heady ale, wondering why I still insisted on Bud Heavy. I waited a few moments and then said, "I think Wendy and I might be separating." "Jesus, Jack," my dad spat. "You haven't even been married for 2 months. What the hell brought all of this on? You wouldn't believe me if I told you." "Ah, hell, Jack. You obviously didn't come over here to talk about the damned weather." "It's just that, well, I don't know, Dad. I can't help but feel like Wendy has never gotten over what happened to Kevin, and she is still really tight with the Parmaleys. So much so, in fact, that she spends more time with them than she does me. Christ, she spends more time with them than she does her own family, even." "But Jack," my mom interrupted, "you can't just expect her to cut off all ties with them. They were a huge part of her life. And you can't just expect her to erase her life with Kevin either." "I don't expect her to, Mom. I just wish she would put as much of a priority on me and my family as she does the Parmaleys. Hell, I wish she made her own family that much of a priority." "Does any of this have to do with Ed Parmalee?" Dad asked. "It has a lot to do with Ed. He has been nothing but super critical of me ever since Wendy and I started dating. I'd rather dig out my own kidney with a fork than have to spend time with him." "Yeah, he was kind of a prick that day we were over at your house," Dad observed. "That's another thing, too. The house doesn't even feel like mine. Wendy pretty much refused to let me bring any of my stuff in the house when we got married. I had to put it all in storage. Finally, I got so fed up with it that I brought some of my things over and made my man cave in the basement. Ed just about shit when he saw that. He was totally pissed that we put Kevin's recliner in a spare bedroom. But it's your house now, too, Jack. You've got to put your foot down about some things." "I know, Dad, but every time I do, it just seems to drive Wendy farther away. Like Mom said, I think Wendy sees it as me trying to drive a wedge between her and her previous life." "I couldn't help but notice the wedding pictures," Mom said. "Yeah, that's another thing. Wendy put up our wedding pictures, but she still has all of her wedding pictures of her and Kevin on the wall. And she made sure that all of her and Kevin's pictures were placed higher on the wall than the ones of my and Wendy's wedding." "That doesn't necessarily mean anything," Mom said. "No, but it is still just really weird." I feel like I'm living in the shadow of Kevin's ghost all the time. I'm always second best and I can't seem to stay on Wendy's good side. I am never going to be welcome around the Parmaleys, and things just keep getting worse each and every day. Where is Wendy right now? Dad asked. My pained silence was obvious. Well, she's on her way back from Hawaii right now. Hawaii? What is she doing in Hawaii? My mom demanded. She took a last-minute trip with the entire Parmalee clan. Supposedly, Ed's mother was supposed to go but couldn't because she had a pacemaker put in a week before the trip. Personally, I think it was a bullshit excuse to try and get Wendy to go along. And she went along without you? Believe me, Dad. I tried to convince her not to go, but with everything else that had happened, she felt she needed to go so each of us could have some space to sort things out. At least, that's what she said anyway. Personally, I think she just wanted to relive the good old days with the Parmaleys. I have no doubt that Ed and Joanne would probably love to see her get hooked up with their son, Nate. He's the only single kid they have left. My dad leaned in. You said everything else that happened just a minute ago. What else has happened since you got married, Jack? At that point, I started to break down in front of my own parents. As distasteful as it was, I started to spill my guts and tell them everything. The family picnic at the Parmaleys where I was all but ignored, even by Wendy. I told them about her calling out Kevin's name during intimacy. And yes, I even gave them the rundown on catching her reliving her sexual escapades with Kevin in our own bed. Both of them were absolutely shocked and horrified when I told them that it appeared that Wendy had every intention of getting pregnant with Kevin's sperm as soon as she got back from Hawaii. It took me a good 20 minutes or so. When I finished, my dad just sat back in his chair and let out a long, slow whistle of disbelief. Mom just sat there, staring at the table in embarrassment and shock. After several awkward moments of tense silence, my mom finally spoke. Jack, you know we will support you in whatever you decide to do. I truly, truly hope for your and Wendy's sake that it doesn't come to a divorce. But maybe what Wendy needs is understanding. Understanding from you that you know how tough it is to lose someone you love. Yeah, that brings up an interesting point, Dad added. What did Wendy say when you told her about Connie? Suddenly, the little bit of confidence and courage I was gaining from opening up to my parents completely evaporated. I hadn't expected the conversation to take a turn like this. Well, my dad prodded. I never told her. My dad leaned in with a look of utter horror on his face. What? You never told her about Connie? Oh, Jack, my mom said, tearing up. Why would you hold that back from her, sweetheart? I guess I just didn't want her to think it would be an issue. Jesus, Jack, Dad spat. How did you think it wouldn't be an issue? I don't know, Dad. I just didn't want her to think I was dwelling on that part of my life. You're 35 years old, Jack. You were 22 when it happened. You want to talk about someone who was living in the past and couldn't let go of it? We could damned easy be talking about you. I just didn't want Wendy to think I wasn't over it, Mom and Dad. You weren't over it, Jack. And I'm going to tell you something. If you're going to lord this issue with Kevin over Wendy's head, you had better be ready for an absolute shitstorm from her when she finds out you didn't tell her. The pain of my spiraling marriage to Wendy, combined with the renewed memories of Connie, were the catalyst to the floodgates opening. I released a torrent of tears and sobbing the likes of which I hadn't done since Connie's funeral. Mom realized there was nothing she could do other than to come over and hug me and cry with me. My dad sighed, leaned forward and took my hand in his. I know I don't tell you this enough, Jack, but I love the absolute shit out of you. You've got yourself a real mess here, son. I wish I had an answer on how to fix it. I don't, but I do know that you've got to level with Wendy. You've got to let her know how this is affecting you. And you got to let her know about Connie, too. Then she'll know that you understand how it feels. I spent the rest of the evening in the company of my parents. We talked some more about Wendy and me, but spent most of the evening just spending time with each other. As I get older, I've come to realize that there are most likely fewer days ahead in this world for my parents than there are behind them. I realize that I just don't spend enough time with them, and there will undoubtedly come a day when I come to deeply regret that. No matter what happened with me and Wendy in the long run, I was definitely going to change that. As I got ready to leave my parents' house that night, it became painfully obvious to me that I was really in no shape to drive as my dad and I had polished off the better part of 3 six-packs of the Sam Adams. Mom wasted no time in fixing up my old room, and I relished how the feel of the bed I slept in growing up felt more comfortable than that of the finest 5-star hotels. As I nestled in under an old quilt my grandmother made, I checked my phone one last time and saw that I missed several calls from Wendy. She was obviously back in Red River Falls. The last thing I got was a text saying, "Back in town. Looking all over for you." Where are you? I simply typed back, somewhere safe. Stop looking. I'll see you when I'm ready to see you. I got back to the campground the next morning and discovered that Wendy had obviously been there. There was a handwritten note taped to the door of my fifth wheel. Jack, please don't keep running from me. I had no idea you would take me being gone so hard. I thought it was best for us to clear our heads. Now I see that I was wrong. You didn't have to move out. I never wanted that. If you won't come home, then at least tell me where you are or someplace we can meet to talk. Please don't shut me out. You have nothing to be sorry about. What? Me sorry? Jesus, she was becoming as self-centered and arrogant as Ed Parmalee. I tore the note off the trailer door and crumpled it up after I finished reading it. Damn, so much for staying out in the woods. She would probably guess that I moved back into my old apartment complex, but she couldn't know just yet which apartment I had moved into. I didn't doubt that she would probably figure it out sooner or later just by following me. But if I was lucky, I might still have another day or two by myself before we eventually had to meet. I packed up my stuff from the camper after grabbing a quick shower and cleaning up first. I made a few phone calls to some friends who had gone through divorces and asked who the best divorce attorney in Red River Falls was. It was nearly unanimous that Danielle Nichols was absolutely ruthless and didn't play fair at all. She only cared about her clients, and she cared about winning. And she did whatever was necessary for both. I made a quick phone call to her law office at Brown, Graham, Norris, Slater, and Nichols. She didn't have a lot of time to meet with me today, but could at least pencil me in for a consultation that afternoon. I also had a doctor's appointment that day, in which I was cleared to return to work at the fire department. My next shift would be on Saturday. Ironically, the day Wendy and the Parmalees were supposed to have returned from Hawaii. I would love to just hide for 2 days, but I also knew that was impossible and wasn't practical. My dad called me after my doctor's appointment and told me that Wendy had actually showed up at their place about a half hour after I left. Luckily for me, I ended up taking a completely indirect way back to Red River Falls and missed her along the road to my parents' house. My appointment with my attorney, Danielle Nichols, went fairly well. It was helped by the fact that I really didn't want or need anything from Wendy. I told Danielle that I didn't even really want to file for divorce. I just wanted the option at my disposal in case Wendy refused to pull her head out of her butt. The truth is, I wanted Wendy to divorce herself from the Parmalees, but I knew the odds of that were pretty slim. I decided to forego heading back to the campground and decided to stay at my new apartment instead. Besides, I needed to start getting everything situated in there so I could get a little better settled in. I spent most of the later afternoon and evening doing exactly that. I had left my cell phone out in the truck and didn't remember it until about 9 o'clock that night. I had been so busy that I completely forgot all about it. I took that as a good sign that maybe I was doing better emotionally and mentally than I thought, as though I could somehow make it through all of this if Wendy and I split up for good. I quickly retrieved my phone, making sure there was no one watching me, which there wasn't. I made a mental note to try and quit acting so paranoid. After all, it was Wendy who was looking for me, not Al-Qaeda. In some ways, the sooner we could have our conversation, the better. I got my wish as soon as I started checking text messages and voicemails. There were over 60 messages just since that morning, all begging me to come home and make sense of this. The voicemail started out contrite but quickly eroded to paranoia and Wendy freaking out, wondering if I had decided to go off and kill myself or something. There wasn't much point in listening to all of the voicemails, since I knew they would all pretty much say the same thing. So I decided to call her and get it over with. She picked up on the first ring. Jack, is that you? Yeah, it's me. Oh my God, where are you? I looked for you at the campground and at your parents' place. They said they didn't know where you were. I know. I was pretty vague with them about where I'd be. Where are you? If you won't come home, then I'll come to you. Don't bother, Wendy. I'm not in the mood right now for a confrontation. I just called to tell you that I'm okay. Please, Jack. I need to see you. We need to get all of this straightened out. I didn't mean for it to seem like I was leaving you by going to Hawaii. I just wanted some time to sort all of this out. How did you think avoiding me for 10 days, less than 2 months into our marriage, could possibly help solve anything? I don't know, Jack. I guess I just needed the help and advice of people I trust, that's all. Jesus, Wendy, I said, shaking my head. The problem is right in front of you, and you can't even see it. Jack, this is not about the Parmalees. It is about us. Sooner or later, you're going to have to accept that I had a life before you, Jack. You need to accept the fact that Kevin's family is still my family, and they always will be. No one is making you live in Kevin's shadow, Jack. Bullshit, I thought. I accept that fact, Wendy. I knew full well how it was going to be when I made the decision that I wanted a relationship with you. But it has become very clear to me that Kevin's family doesn't accept me. Even still, that is only a small part of why our marriage is in serious trouble. And the fact that you would willingly leave me for 10 days to spend a vacation in Hawaii with them tells me where your loyalty lies. And it isn't with your husband. God, Jack, you can be so frustrating. You know that? This isn't fair. You can't just expect me to forget about Kevin and my life with him. You can't possibly understand what it was like to lose Kevin and all of our hopes, dreams, and ambitions. You can't imagine what it is like seeing the one you love die right before your eyes like that. You have no idea, Jack. Not until something like that happens to you can you really understand what I went through. The Parmaleys understand, Jack. You couldn't possibly understand. Her words made me flinch like a gut punch. I could hear her crying in the background over the phone, and my own tears started streaming down my cheeks. I understand much better than you think, Wendy, I said, trembling. Much better. And then I hung up on her. Wendy tried calling me numerous times over the next hour or so, but eventually realized it was futile and gave up after sending me a final text. I'm not giving up on you, Jack. So don't give up on us either. You just need to understand that my past is important to me. I can't pretend like it didn't happen. You can't understand what I went through, but you should at least understand it will always be a part of who I am. But that doesn't mean I don't love you, Jack. I do. We still need to talk some more, so this conversation doesn't end here. There didn't seem to be much point in even sending a reply, so I didn't bother and, instead, grabbed a Sam Adams from the fridge. My dad got me hooked, and vegged out in front of the TV for the rest of the night. I couldn't get over the arrogance Wendy was showing. She absolutely refused to acknowledge screwing herself silly on the bed while watching her and Kevin's homemade sex tape. And she had yet to even begin to acknowledge importing Kevin's sperm and planning a pregnancy with a dead man. I got up early the next morning, which was Friday. It was my last day off work before heading back in for my first regular shift in over 2 weeks. I was looking forward to getting back to work and not being so much of a bum. But, of course, when I'm actually at work, I am usually thinking about how nice it is to be away from work. Life is weird that way, I guess. Danielle Nichols had some free time that morning to be able to see me. We sat down and she grabbed me a fresh cup of coffee, which I don't normally drink, but didn't want to seem rude by not accepting. What do you think you want to do, Jack? She asked. Well, I said, hesitating. Truth be told, I want to do something to wake her up. I guess I want to do something that will make her realize that the relationship isn't one-sided. I want to do something that will make her realize that I have some control and power over the relationship, too. She needs to understand that she can bail out on me with the Parmaleys whenever she wants, but that doing so is going to have some consequences. So, if I'm hearing you right, what you are saying is that you want to have her served with papers, but you want to maintain the right to call it off before we get very far. Sound about right? Yeah, I guess you kind of hit the nail on the head. It is pretty common, actually. Many spouses who are divorcing because of infidelity will file for divorce to try and snap the other spouse out of what they call the fog of the affair. It's an effort to try and get the unfaithful spouse to understand that their actions will have dire consequences. Do most of them eventually get divorced? I'd say it's about 50-50, which is actually pretty good odds. For me and my husband, infidelity was a deal breaker. Wow. I was shocked. Danielle Nichols was extremely hot, in a rip-your-heart-out-with-a-spoon kind of way. No offense, but why the hell would he want to cheat on you? Because he could, and because he had a law clerk let him. Fairly typical in this business, I'm afraid. But hey, we're still partners in this firm, she said, pointing to his picture on the wall, along with the rest of the partners. We couldn't figure out how to play together, but we can at least work together. I just let out of a whistle of disbelief. So, how fast can we make this happen? Well, she said, today is Friday, so I won't be able to get it done today. But I can finish everything up, call the sheriff's office, and have her served Tuesday morning. Will that work? That's perfect. I work Tuesday anyway. Okay, we'll do it. And remember, it doesn't mean you have to go through with it. If you feel like you and Wendy are making progress towards reconciliation, you can withdraw this at any time. I'll only bill you for the hours I actually work on it and refund the rest of your retainer. Okay, then, I said, standing and offering my hand. Danielle had a hell of a grip. I got to work the next morning for my shift at 8 o'clock. Saturdays are generally a fairly lax day for us, as it is a day to clean the entire station in the morning, as well as wash and maintain all of the fire trucks and ambulances. We usually have a fairly light afternoon, depending on how many fire and EMS calls we are running. Wendy called me, as I knew she would, shortly after I got to work that morning, and asked if she could stop by later and talk. I told her no, that I was going to be too busy and had too much on my mind and needed to concentrate on work. It was BS, really. When we were dating, Wendy used to come by the fire station all the time. The truth to the matter was, I just really didn't want to see her. I had Sunday and Monday off. Tuesday was the day that Wendy was going to get served the papers.